We are going to look at two texts. Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 6, and then Matthew chapter 20, 20 to 28. Now, this second story that's in Matthew 20 is also found in Mark chapter 10. So we're going to look at these stories and learn about what does it take to become the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And the title of this message also is, Who is the Greatest? So the question this morning is, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? But before we look at that first verse, I just want to talk a little bit about the fact that as human beings we forget the lessons that we learned at one point in our life. Do you know what I mean? We were all taught lessons in our life that we eventually either forget or decide to ignore. You know what I mean? Anybody can relate to this? For example, you're in high school and you take a class in economics, and they teach you a little bit about making a budget and saving money and all of that stuff. And then that class is over. 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you have a credit card debt and you owe money, and you have forgotten the lesson that you have learned. You see, or your parents teach you to be careful about who you associate with, right? And they keep telling you from the early age, you're 5, 6 years old. I remember my mother was, you should not hang around with that kid because he's cussing too much. And then you grow up and there are kids who are stealing, and you should not be associating with them, And you are taught these lessons, but pretty quick you ignore them or you forget them, and all of a sudden all your friends are bums and you're having all kinds of problems in life, right? So we tend to forget the lessons that we have learned, or we decide to ignore them. So in this particular case that we are looking at in the Bible here, there was a lesson that Jesus taught his disciples, and you will see that pretty quickly they forgot that lesson and they ignored it. In verse 18 it says, at that time the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And when I look at that question, it reminds me that we as human beings are obsessed with this greatness business. Even nowadays, we ask the same question all the time. Who is the greatest baseball player ever? Babe Ruth or somebody else? And we are going to have different arguments about it. Who is the greatest basketball player? Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Soccer player, Pele or Messi? You see, you can go down the list. Who is the greatest singer? If you ask Pastor Gordon, I'm going to say Elvis Presley, And then everybody else, a lot of other people are going to say, Elvis Presley, are you kidding me? Who? Kim, there you go. Good one, you see. So we are obsessed with this question of greatness. Who is the greatest doctor? Who is the best car dealer in Denver? Because when I go buy one, I want to buy from the best. And we look at the reviews, right? Now you can go online and you really feel like you get this tremendous urge to have a Taco Bell, and you look up the closest one and it has only 1 star, and everybody says it's horrible, don't go there, We rate everything in life. You can go on Amazon or Costco and you want to buy a big screen TV, and you can open your phone and you can see how many stars it has. I bought the package of these glasses. They are reading glasses, but you know what the difference is? They block blue light. So if in the evening, if I'm on a computer, they block the blue light and make it a lot easier. And by the way, now I'm not advertising these, but I'm sleeping so much better after a week of using these, you see, because they block that blue light that makes your brain explode with energy, you see. So before night, if I'm watching TV or a computer, I use these. But I went online to buy these on Amazon, and there was a bunch of them that are selling these blue light blockers, reading glasses, any number that you need, +1, -1, whatever, But I looked at the ratings, and I chose the one that had, it's hard to find anything with 5 stars because there is always somebody who says, oh, this product just sucks, There is always that one person. I think they do it on purpose. But I found one that had the most stars, and that's the one I bought. And that's how we live our life. We're obsessed with this question, who is the greatest? What is the greatest? What is the best? Whether it's a car or a house or anything, So the disciples, they came to Jesus, and they asked the same question, you see, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus, instead of directly answering that question, verse 2 says, and calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, truly I say to you, and now look at this, truly I say to you, he's not giving them an answer, he's telling them what to do. Unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So Jesus, he said, hey, let's not even talk about greatness or who is the greatest. I mean, you're not even in there yet. You see, you already want to talk about who is the greatest, but you haven't even made it in yet. He says, if you want to make it in, just to get into the heaven, he says you got to turn around and become like one of these children. So Jesus is saying to them that a deliberate decision is required in order to enter into the heaven. You see, and that deliberate decision is to become like a child. When I was a kid, in the neighborhood, we had a bunch of kids, and by the time I was 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, we were always outside, like these kids on this island in Indonesia. They don't have Wi-Fi, so they're out there playing with each other, playing soccer. We bought them a soccer ball when we were there. We sent somebody to the island that were going over there. We gave them money, and they brought back a soccer ball and the volleyball net and the volleyball balls, and all of a sudden these kids, they were just out there all day long playing with each other. When I was a kid, my goal was to go outside and be with my friends and play. Never entered my mind that I needed to be better than them. Because as a child, you don't think that way. You don't think I need to be the greatest. But then you grow up. I remember when I got to high school in Chicago and I went on a soccer team, my goal was still to go out there and be with my friends and play. But by now, I'm older and I'm thinking, I want to be the best. I want to be better than them. I want to be the greatest. So, I'm doing whatever the coach tells me to do. I'm practicing. I'm playing like crazy all the time, day in and day out. Then you go to college, same thing. You're not thinking as a child anymore. You're thinking like a man. I want to be number one. I want to be the first one in my class. I want to be the best on that field. I want to accomplish something. And then you become an adult and you want to have the more money than anybody else. And you want to have the better job than anybody else. And you want to be the greatest. And Jesus knew this, and that's why he brought in a little kid and he says, hey, you need to turn around. Go back to being like a little kid. Where you are not thinking about who's the greatest, but you are thinking about enjoying and loving the company of these other people. And you are not wanting to lord it over them. As a matter of fact, he says, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So he's just dashing all of their ideas to pieces, these ideas of greatness, heaven, and they are thinking in terms of human hierarchy, who is the greatest, who is the boss, who's going to have the best seat in the house. Now we live on a planet where the best seat in the house go to the richest person, right? They get the box seats at any game, the most expensive. So this is how they were thinking. And Jesus says, you can't think that way. You got to humble yourself like a little child. A little child is not thinking like that. They're thinking a little bit different. And then Jesus says, not only that, but whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. So he's telling them three things. You got to turn around, you got to humble yourself, and you cannot look at people according to their status. You got to receive even the little ones. To receive means to accept. So, if you're somebody with a big degree and a big paycheck, Jesus is saying you got to accept somebody who is not. If I have a job and I'm making money and I'm living a good life, Jesus says you got to accept that homeless person who is not doing any of those things. You got to accept even somebody who doesn't deserve it. Even that. In other words, Jesus is saying you got to humble yourself and you got to accept those who are already humble. And that's not human nature. We like to associate with people at the top. We like to be friends with people who drive expensive cars and live in expensive homes. We like our friends to be rich and powerful. We don't like to hang around with somebody who is a nobody. So Jesus is totally destroying their idea of who's who, of what's important, of how to look and how to live on this planet. And he's saying you got to accept the sinners, the ones who do things that you don't approve of. Jesus himself associated and befriended sinners, including the ones that everybody looked down on, prostitutes. Even with them, Jesus was friends. You see, so that's what it means to receive, to accept. And then he says, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. Jesus is expressing his devotion and how important to him these people are. These people who the rest of the world looks at and says, oh, they are nobody. Jesus says, maybe they are nobody to you. But if you mistreat them, be better for you not to have been born. So Jesus taught them this lesson about humility, about accepting those who are poor and those who are humble and those whom the world does not consider to be important. He taught them that lesson. A little bit of time goes by, and that's why I said how quickly we forget the lessons that we learn. And then we go to Matthew 20 and Mark 10, and you have this new story where two of the disciples come to Jesus. In Matthew 20, it says that their mother came to Jesus and made a request of him. In Mark, it says that they themselves came to Jesus and made that same request. But the request was the same. You know, the Gospels were written 30, 40, 50 years after Jesus was gone. So sometimes you have differences in how the story is told. I believe that both the mother and the sons were there. John and James. You see, Mark names them. Says John and James. And they came to Jesus. In Matthew it says, then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked him for something. And he said to her, what do you want? And she said to him, say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom. In Mark, it says that they came to Jesus and they said to him, we want you to do whatever we ask of you. And Jesus, same answer, Jesus says, well, what do you want? And they said, when the kingdom comes, we want to sit one of us on your right hand and another one on your left hand. They knew Jesus was going to be the king, right? And they believed that the kingdom was coming. And they were just positioning themselves for the promotion, you see. They were just forward-thinking guys. They said, we want to be there. We want to be on your side. We want to be at the table. We want to be in charge. We want to be the ministers. We want to be the appointees. You see, we want to be the right hand and the left hand of you. And Jesus answered and said, you do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm to drink? Do you really know what you're asking? Are you able to suffer the sufferings that I'm going to suffer? Are you able to live a miserable life? You know, Jesus' life was coming to an end very quickly here at this point. Very quickly. But they were going to go on for many years. And they were going to suffer. And they were going to be miserable. And Jesus knew all of this. That they were going to be persecuted and imprisoned and beaten and just living a life that's not, you know, what prosperity Christianity preaches about. He knew that. And he says, are you able to drink the cup? Are you able to carry the same weight that I'm going to carry? Are you able to do the work that I'm going to do? Are you able to suffer the way I'm going to suffer? Are you able to go to the ends of the world to preach the gospel and this message and to sacrifice everything in that cause? And look how quickly they respond and they say to him, we are able. They truly did not understand what was waiting for them. And he said to them, you will drink my cup. You will. You know, he says you will suffer. And you will be persecuted. And you will do the work. And you will travel. And you will preach. And you will die for this cause. You will. And you will also experience, I think Jesus, when he said that, he also was implying all of that, but you will also experience what does it mean to be in service to God. You see? So when you suffer and when you're persecuted and when you sacrifice and when you do things for God, that sounds horrible, right? On one hand. But on the other hand, you're working for God. On the other hand, there is no higher cause that you can join, that you can be a part of. So he's saying that to them, yes, you will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were annoyed at the two brothers. The other disciples, they were annoyed. They were angry. They were frustrated with these two brothers. Why do they want to be the greatest? You know why they were annoyed at them? Not because the other 10 were humbled, but because they were angry at the competition. They were angry that these guys thought to ask Jesus before they did. True leadership is all about serving, servanthood. That's what Jesus was trying to teach them. And then he teaches them the lesson again that he taught them some months earlier. But Jesus called them to him and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. Lord it over them. So, you know, I was thinking about it and I'm wondering about the different ways of lording over somebody. How do you lord over somebody? Is somebody lording it over you? Ways of lording it over somebody. I put those 3 things on, and I want to hear what you guys are thinking. You can shut somebody down, right? They start speaking, or you start speaking, and they just shut you down. That's a way of lording it over somebody. Keeping a person down, diminishing their worth. Sometimes that happens in marriage, where one party, and it's mostly men, but it can be women too, where one spouse is so domineering that they diminish the other person. And they keep them down. They're lording it over them. It's my way or no way. You don't know nothing. Just shut up and look pretty. You know, is what some men are thinking. And so, but women do it to their husbands too, you know. Just, you don't know nothing. I know where you come from, you know. I know what you were before you met me, you know. I straightened you out, and now you know, lording it over somebody. Have you been lorded over at work sometimes? You know, you have a superior and they are not letting you. They put you in your place. They put you in your place really quick. Especially sometimes if you are smart and they see that you're going to that you're going to advance, and if they see that one day you're going to be a threat to them, so they just keep you down there and they shut down your ideas, and they don't let anybody above them know that you really are a smart person, you see. Lording it over somebody. And we have this today in every area of society where somebody is lording over someone. And Jesus says, in this world, this is how it works. People, they lord it over each other. And they're great ones in this world. They exercise authority over them. Even in the church, we have the examples of somebody exercising authority over somebody else. You have hierarchy, right? So you have the Pope, right? And he tells the cardinals what to do. And they tell the local priests what to do. In Seventh-day Adventist Church, we have a GC president. And then we have, I don't know how many other presidents we have anymore, you know. And everybody's telling somebody else what to do. These are the positions of authority, even in the church. Even in the local church, there can be created a situation where somebody is lording it over somebody else because they are an elder. And when there is a board meeting, they shut down everybody else. And if you're a deacon, well, you're a deacon, I'm an elder, so why don't you, keep your opinion to yourself. So it's a human nature to seek authority and seek greatness and seek to lord it over somebody. How many times have you seen in the church, even in the church, that somebody who has money, they're lording it over everybody else? They have money. Hey, I bought this piano. I paid $10,000. This church board better do what I say. You know. And how many times you have pastors who say, well, brother so-and-so, they're giving so much money to the church. We better do what they want us to do. And you have this on every level of human society, including in the churches. And Jesus is exposing all of this. And then look at verse 26, what he says. It shall not be so among you. This is a declaration. This is not a suggestion. This is not an advice. This is not a counsel. This is a direct order. Clear, direct order. He says, it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must, look at the words, must be your servant. He taught them earlier, you got to turn around and go back and be like a child. If you ask a child to do something, as they are growing and as they are learning to respect, if you tell your child to go to the store and buy something, they'll do what you tell them to do. You see? Child will serve. Jesus says, in this Christianity business, if you want to be great in heaven, if you want to be great, you must become a servant. You must become a servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your slave. So in the kingdom of heaven, it's a totally different situation. The one who is the greatest is not the one who is being served, but the one who serves. And then Jesus says, and I love this verse, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. I just want you to understand the gravity of this verse. Jesus, the Son of God, Jesus who was there at creation, Jesus who is adored and worshipped by multiple billions of angels all over the universe, Jesus who sits on the heavenly throne and receives praise from the whole universe, he says that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to die for many. And that same offer is good today. That same Jesus, today, you and I, 2019, Arvada, Colorado, and that same Jesus says, I'm here to serve you. What do you need? What do you need? How can I help you? We cannot even comprehend what we have available to us. We cannot even comprehend the tremendous gift and the power of the Son of God who says, I died for you and I came to serve and I came to give my life as a ransom for many. And he says, hey, turn around, be humble. Turn around, serve. Turn around, do something great in the kingdom of God. Feed the hungry. Heal the wounds. Encourage those who are stressed out and depressed. Lift up somebody who is down. Go visit a sick person. Go call somebody you haven't talked to in years. Say, hey, how you doing? Go pray for somebody. Do something. Serve. You want to be greatest in the kingdom of God? How more clear can this be? I want us to do another mission trip next year. Same place, Indonesia. This time I want to take a doctor, I want to take a dentist, I want to take more people. We can literally take 100 people and everybody would be busy for 2 weeks. Why? Because in that area, there are islands all over the place. And people living on those islands, each island, same conditions. No food, no medical, no gospel, no hope. Diseases, accidents, hungry kids, all of that stuff. And I want us to continue feeding the homeless here in Denver. And I want us to continue having the food bank here at the church, which is getting busier and busier and busier every week, especially now that the holidays are coming. I'm getting reports that it's getting real busy. Peron's telling me. More and more people are coming and asking for food. Want us to continue to preach the gospel on radio, television. Want us to continue to invite people to come to church. want us to revive our prayer ministry, want us to revive our elder and deacon ministries where people are actually taking the responsibility for the spiritual life of their fellow church members. We're going to do some things downstairs with the children's ministries where people can be more involved. Our youth class next door is growing again. We have asked Jenny to lead out full time just in that. And 3, 4, 5 weeks later that she's been doing it, it's already growing. So where are you going to serve? How are you going to serve? Are you going to serve God next year with a grateful heart and humble heart? After the early service today, somebody walked up to me and says, "Hey, Pastor Gordon, I want to come and help out one day every week." We had these ladies, Aldi and Kay and the rest of them took their Sunday mornings off and came to church and refurbished the old chairs that we have in the gym. They made them look like brand new. Just beautiful. That's a sacrifice. We have a lady in the church here. She couldn't be here today, but she sends cards. I gave her the names of the people who are sick and not feeling good. And she sends them a card and says, "Hey, just so you know, we're praying for you." You see, we have pet finders. They need help all the time. There is no limit to how much we can serve in God's work on this earth. There is no limit. So over the next 5 or 6 weeks, I'm going to put a lot of effort into organizing and building this up so that you guys get involved. After Jim died, I realized, really in a big way, how much he did and how many people we should have really involved in this church. It's not right that one or two do most of the work. And I tell you, this is God's. The building, the property, the parking lot, the trees, the bushes, the flowers, the sprinkler system, the swamp cooler system, everything is God's. I feel like, when I come here, I feel like this is a temple of God, from the Old Testament where God was present there. That's His property. It's not the conferences. It's not ours, really, The work is also God's, When God is expecting us to invite some other people to these empty seats, both services. God is expecting us to reach out to those who are less fortunate than us. God is expecting us to put a little money aside to help somebody who is not where we are. God is expecting us to do all of these things. That's why I talked about this today. I want to put it in your ear, and I want you to look for what we're going to have in the lobby there, explanations and sign-up sheets of what it is that we want to do and all of the work that it's going to take. But I think 2020 is coming very quickly. Holidays are going to be over before you know it. We're going to be in January. I would really like us to have a good year next year. I'd like us to have one of our better years in terms of baptisms, in terms of, I'm talking about things that we can measure. Baptisms, attendance, giving. But then I'm also talking about things that we cannot measure. How many people are we going to encourage? How many people are we going to bring from the depths of depression back to a a church family where they're going to feel loved and cared for. How many people who are giving up on God and leaving the church and don't want nothing to do with it are going to come back and say, you know, maybe I don't understand the Bible and the message and all of that stuff, but I love these people. And that's besides all the hungry and poor and sick and miserable and mission trips, is the things that we can do here today after this service. You know, it's about a lifestyle that is looking out to make a difference in another person's life. That's what it's about. It's about the mentality and the state of mind, which is what Jesus was trying to tell them. Get outside of your own, I'm the most important and I want to be the greatest. Get outside of that. And have this mentality where you're looking at life and at world and you're looking at people and you're saying, how does God want me to help this person, to make a difference in their life? And you know what? I'm ranting a little bit, but you know what? I hear what Kim said about going to Indonesia and coming back and not feeling like you want to help some of the homeless people here in Denver. And I'll tell you why. I experienced the same thing. And some of you who went to other countries have too. You go over there and there is nothing. Different levels of poverty. I told you that, right? Nothing. No food, no medical, no resources, no 911, no ambulance, no nothing. This little girl, she got burned with burning oil. There is nothing. There is no ointment. There is no pharmacy. There is no nothing. There is 60 miles of open ocean, and if you have a boat and if you can get there in 6 hours, maybe there you can find a doctor that will help you. There is nothing. And then you come back here and you go feed the homeless and you give him a plate of food and he spits in it and throws it at the ground. We had that happen. We had it where we go here and the homeless has a cell phone. Everybody, every homeless person in Denver has a cell phone. And you come back from that trip and you say, what are we doing? We could take $70 and feed 100 kids over there for a week. What are we doing? And I look at this, and Jesus says, the Son of Man came to die, not for those who deserve it, not for those who earned it, not for those who appreciate it, not for those who are going to go out of their way to change their life. He just came to die for whoever wants to be saved. So you know what? We can't judge. We can't judge. We got to help where we are. There is different kinds of needs all over the world. And you can go to a place in the world where this woman that Kim was talking about has 7 kids. She doesn't know if her husband is alive because he went fishing 3 or 4 months ago, never came back. They got no food, no medical, no nothing. She has the need that is the size of a Pikes Peak. And then you come back to Denver, and I'm sitting in my office, and the little girl comes in and says, Pastor Gordon, do you have a Band-Aid? It really hurts, you know. And you know what? There is no difference. That woman over there, she has the biggest problem of her life. But this little girl, she has the biggest problem of her life too. You know, and to her, that's the biggest problem of her life right now and right at that moment. So we can't pick and choose. We can be smart about it. There are people who abuse churches and abuse goodness of somebody's heart and are lazy and don't, I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about being humble and saying, you know what, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to serve. So that's my message for today. I don't have a really fancy closing. So, when pastors put together sermons, there is always this, you got to have a great introduction, and you got to have a great closing thought. And I just don't have either. So, God bless you.